Hey everyone, this is my response for case 15.2, the executive leadership team. One of the first questions addresses some barriers of inclusion that Dr. Lockhart faced. I would say that one of the biggest barriers that she faced in her role was the fact that she was a woman stepping into this position that had primarily been run by a man in the past. And a lot of the remarks that people have been saying towards her, for example, on page 152, people have said, quote, Dr. Marcos didn't do this way, and, quote, what are you trying to prove, when she was bringing up some of her ideas and visions for the university. I think that a lot of this has to do with just the fact that they haven't seen someone, especially in the IT department, be a woman in a very high executive leadership position. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons why this is a barrier for her, is that they have this pre-existing notion that someone who can only run this position should be a man, and that's pretty problematic. Number 2 says, what does the case suggest about Dr. Lockhart's leadership style compared to Dr. Marcos? The case suggests that, let me see. Some of the faculty members said on, again, page 152, that they needed to add some like diversity to the leadership team, and that's probably why they assume that Dr. Lockhart is there at the department. For number 3, how is Dr. Matthews's leadership been helpful or harmful to Dr. Lockhart? So first, he wasn't really willing to talk with her about the actual issue. He just said that there were some concerns she had about the position, and she was trying to express herself by saying that it's become difficult to move forward in this division because of some of the negative perceptions that the faculty has of her. And he basically gave her some space, saying that, okay, well, we'll talk about this in the next meeting, and then failed to recognize as part of her need to talk to the board about her, just her issues with the whole perception they have of her and of her gender. And then during the meeting, which is really, honestly, like, it's not surprising that this is like brought up in a case study, because I feel like this happens, sometimes in universities. But Dr. Matthews said, I appreciate your concerns, Dr. Lockhart, but I think you need to toughen up and lead like a man. And this is really frustrating, I'm sure, for her, hypothetically. But I think that's probably the most harmful part about it, is that first, he didn't give her the space to express her concerns to the whole group. And then secondly, when she, did bring up the fact that he didn't give her that space, he then said that she needed to toughen up like a man, which is a pretty harmful and hurtful thing to say to someone. How does this case illustrate gender differences in leadership? Are these real or perceived differences? I would say that, I don't know, I feel like this question was definitely weird, because I'm like, I don't know if, part of me feels like I definitely see that there are sometimes gender differences in leadership, but ultimately at the end, like, it's almost like in my mind, yes, you need to accept the fact that like a woman is in this position, and that's like amazing in my mind, but not everyone's going to see it in that way, because of the fact that it's IT and that's predominantly full of males, and she's a woman stepping into this position. I think that these are just kind of like perceived differences that people have sometimes in workplaces, that if a woman's leading the department, or maybe a man's the president of the university, that's very different. But I really do think that gender doesn't always have to be impacting the type of leadership or the type of job that you're doing. And I do think, though, however, on the flip side, that having more underrepresented people, especially like women, step up in those places of higher up positions is really important. And that leads me to question 5 about organizational changes. I would say that Dr. Lockhart and other women, honestly, let me think about this for a sec. One thing that kind of comes to mind is maybe starting a mentoring program for women in that division of the university. I think that might be beneficial for Dr. Lockhart, and also other women, to see that the company or the division is devoted to supporting women and making sure that they're eventually stepping up in the positions and leading, like having like organizational growth within the division. I'd also say that I think it's important for the men to also initiate this. It's not just something that women can do. Men can do the work too. I think that that's a really difficult thing for, I think, people to grasp sometimes, and this even has to do with when people are talking about DEI work. There's this often very common assumption that only BIPOC people can do the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that's a really sad reality, but I do think it definitely exists. I think that anyone is able to do the work if you're willing to have an open mind and you're willing to put yourself out there and educate yourself. And it doesn't always have to be the marginalized person doing the work. And then lastly, for question 6, what can Dr. Lockhart do on her own to become an accepted leader and a member of the organization? She can, I think, definitely talk to HR about this. I think this is something that's not okay. That's obviously like definitely brings up some toxic masculinity in my mind, but I do think that having this on record with someone, and I think that's really important for if this can, obviously sounds like it's going to continue in the future. So I think having this on record with someone, either with another female colleague, someone that she can trust, but obviously I don't think she can trust anyone in her department if I'm keeping it real. But I do think that if she reported this to HR, at least it's somewhere documented. And I'd also say that maybe she needs to reconsider, like, is this department, is this division really for her? I know that it mentioned at the very end that she had some financial worries about leaving the position, but I do think at the end of the day, you need to be respected in your workplace, and money sometimes is hard to like balance with that. But I do think that she definitely needs to at least tell someone and make sure that this is documented in some place.